Daicos. Well done, Hobbs. Daicos. Don't tell me. Don't tell me yes!
I remember it was in the second quarter. I was tussling with Andrew Ops, and it was probably one of those quick snap goals. I was quite fortunate with it because if you look at it closely, you know, once I do get hold of the ball, my balance isn't all that great. I'm sort of more mid-air and stretching, and I was just fortunate that I did kick the ball end over end, and it went straight. Normally when you lob the ball in the air like that, I mean, it could go to the left, go to the right, bounce back into play, and I suppose with that one I was very fortunate that it did go in.
He finds Daicos. Collingwood wanting goals badly. Daicos lets go with a torpedo punt. It's a magnificent kick! Can that lift the Maggies?
My favourite kick, and one I like using, is a torpedo punt. And this one was against Hawthorn out at VFL Park in 1992. I think it was through midway through the third quarter. And I think more importantly, as I did say earlier, I think it was from a standing shot, and I think the kick is better suited to a standing shot when there's, I suppose, less pressure on you. A very hard kick to get off while being on the run. I was about centre forward on a half forward flank, went back. As I said earlier, more importantly, I was balanced. I tried to get it as close to the goal square as I could, and it was just one of those kicks that you do get onto them, and she sailed through on the full.
Four behind initially, and then kept it off with a beautiful goal. Rocker, too far underneath the ball. Daicos has been quiet. Off the ground, Mr. Magic has done it! Oh, what a magnificent goal!
I was playing on Silvagni. I remember the ball being kicked to a couple of players that were contesting, went over their head. I just happened to be in front, which was more importantly, I was in front. The ball went through my legs, so I was quite fortunate that Stephen ran past me as well. And it was more a reflex thing because he was pressuring me. He was right there. Had I just picked the ball up off the ground, he would have tackled me straight away. And not knowing basically where he was behind me made it pretty hard for me to then take a chance of picking up the ball. I wasn't too far away. I was probably only 10-15 yards out on a slight angle. And I suppose I took my chances, knew where the goals were, socketed the ball off the ground, and the ball went through for a goal.
Over the back, Daicos versus Hocking. Daicos, Hocking. Oh, you showed superior pace in Hocking. Dangerous here, though. Daicos from the boundary. Oh, an amazing goal. Wow, what about that?
The ball went out close to the boundary line. It was one of those where I didn't get a lot of time to think about what I was going to do. Stephen Hocking again was right there, which I suppose most of the time you have got a backman breathing down your neck, which makes it a little bit harder to have time to think about what you're going to do. It was one of those where I had a crowd of players there. It was very hard to try and kick the ball back into the centre of the ground. So I looked up, glanced up, there was no one in the goal square, and my only thoughts were of kicking the ball as hard as I could towards the goal line and hoping that when it did bounce it wasn't going to take a jump back into play or take a leg break or anything like that, that it was going to sail straight through with the force at which I kicked it.
Positive thrust by Collingwood, down towards Daicos and Hocking. Daicos got a hand to it. Oh, he controlled it beautifully, and he's done it again.
We both fell to the ground, and again, one of those where if you had taken the ball picked it up straight off the ground, he would have tackled you straight away. And it was one of those more instinctive goals that all I could do was try and get myself up, balanced, and kick the ball straight off the mat, which I did. And that I would put down to a lot of luck because when you do kick the ball and it bounces 4 or 5 times before it does sail through, well, law of averages are that it has to take a leg break or it has to go to the right or left. that went fairly straight and decided to take a leg break just before it hit the post. So I was fortunate with that one, and I'd put that down to a lot of luck.
Boundary throw in, up over the top, Starcevic. No one can break clear. Attempt to the advantage of Daicos. Look at the gather. The right foot snap. This is a miraculous kick. Unbelievable.
This was one that I'll never forget because it was the first goal that we'd scored in the game. It was early on in the game. The ball was knocked towards the boundary by a third man up, who was Craig Starcevic. I then followed it up, and it was one of those where Peter Cransberg was right on my hammer, and it was one that I couldn't take cleanly, so I sort of tapped it over to the boundary to get a little bit of space, and then once I did that, it gave me an opportunity to balance myself and then kick for goal. And with that one, I had enough time to steady up, run straight at the goals, and was able, I suppose, to kick the most percentage of kicks, which was the drop punt, and the ball sailed through.
Across the face of goal, Daicos and Gaston. He gets a kick. Don't tell me he's kicked that. I will not believe it.
It was one that I knew, again, where the goals were, basically because I'd run across the face of goals. I knew where I was positioned on the point post, and it was one where I tried to step so that he could run past me. He didn't. He was sort of still in line with me. So all I knew I had to do then was basically grab the ball and throw it straight onto my boot. But as I sort of grabbed the ball and went to throw it onto my boot, I tried to virtually come to a stop so that I was balanced, and then with that one the ball went through.
Good kick by Lehman into the breeze. Daicos stays down at the back. It's knocked away by Keys. Here's the magician near the boundary line. 30 metres out, Peter Daicos. 3 kicks, 3 goals!
I suppose being a crummer, I was in the forward pocket, the ball hit the ground. It wasn't a hell of a lot I could do. Again, it was pretty congested. I remember the ball being thumped away or very close to the boundary line. I chased the ball, which gave me, I suppose, the advantage, I suppose, of being in front of my man. Terry Keys was chasing me. I then had to take possession of the ball, which I did. Then it was a matter of swinging onto my left, which was the normal, I suppose, the only position or option I had left open to me. Then I remember being cut off by a couple of Richmond players, and I had to come back onto my right foot, which was very close to the boundary line. But I suppose it helps when your accuracy is on target, which it was. Again, using the most percentage of all kicks, which was the drop punt, and it sailed through for a goal.
Into the pocket he goes, a little too far. Daicos at the back. Can he produce something special here? Oh, yes he can.
It certainly wasn't a fluke, because I think when you're in that situation, you tend to just swipe at the ball and tend to kick it as hard as you can. I think if you look at it slowly, all I did, I looked at the goals, and I was watching the way the ball was coming down. It was in mid-air, which made it very difficult, and I tried to hit the flat side of the ball, so that basically the ball would go through and go through straight. So I was very fortunate. All I had to worry about was accuracy, and which I attained, and the ball sailed through.
He's not wasting any time getting the ball moving. Great bump by Darren Mullane. In comes Brown. Collingwood lifting. Brown right on the boundary line. Back to Mullane likewise. Daicos nearly runs out of room. He's goal! Magnificent goal!
And I suppose my all-time favourite goal which a lot of people do talk to me about, is certainly in 1990 in the qualifying final against the West Coast Eagles, when I kicked that one off the boundary late in the last quarter. I remember Gavin Brown winning the ball after a Darren Mullane solid bump, went to pants, he put it over to me, and there wasn't a lot I could do, and I was being so close to the point post I really couldn't centre it, because you risk the chance of the ball being kicked to someone and umpire calling play on. So I was very close to goal, and the only thing I could do was kick the goal. I mean, if I had to kick the left foot, I really couldn't see a lot of the goals, and I'm pretty certain the ball would have went across goal. So it was more one where I tried to get it. I kicked an inside-out boomerang, and I tried to get it as close to the goal line as possible, hoping that it would get there and then bounce in or go the right way. And I remember, I think it did put us something like 7 or 8 points up, so it did give me a hell of a lot of pleasure, and certainly rates as my favourite goal of all time. Well, I'm sure that my top 10 selection may cause a few arguments, but that's how they sit with me. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the highlights of my career so far, and I hopefully can produce a lot more goals for the club over the next few years. See you at the footy.